Michael will tell you a story, a perfect story. He's a steady man, a reliable father, a working man who did right by his family. Saturday afternoons spent at the grill, Sunday trips for brisket and peaches. He painted a picture of domestic perfection. A quiet suburban life, shady streets, red brick houses, children chasing fireflies in the yard. It is a lie, a beautiful, tragic, self-serving lie. Michael made himself a hero, a martyr for the cause of patriarchal order. He painted me as cold, heartless, power-hungry, disrespectful. He claims I decided to become a surrogate casually, like I was talking about what to make for dinner. No hesitation, just a statement of fact. He missed the reality. He always misses the reality. Because Michael never looks beyond the surface, he loves rituals, routine, the safety of a predefined rhythm, the hum that makes him feel secure. Peach market traditions, Saturday mowing. It was a stage he constructed, and I was just an actor in his perfect domestic play. He didn't see the fear. He didn't feel my hands shaking. He didn't notice the weight pulling my shoulders down. He saw arrogance because arrogance fit his narrative. It was easier than asking questions, easier than opening his eyes to the pain right in front of him. The noise of the television flickering in the background, shadows stretching across the room. He says I drove to Dallas behind his back. He says I signed clinic papers and drained money for injections without a hint. Imagine the blindness required to believe that. I was Sarah's twin. Our bond was ordinary sisterhood, he claims. He admired it, envied it sometimes. He never knew the truth. He never saw the viper living right next to us. Sarah knew how to use pain. She was a master manipulator, an extortionist, failed treatments, IVF prayers. It was all a front. She didn't want compassion. She wanted a victim, and I was available. The secret she held over me wasn't about a child. It was about our parents. A dark, ugly blackmail secret about a fire, decades ago, about what really happened to them. A truth that would destroy what little memory we had left of them. It would poison Jacob's mind. It would ruin Lily and Noah's lives. Sarah held that secret like a loaded gun to my head. Every whispered phone call Michael thought was just sisters confiding was blackmail, pure and simple. Her voice wasn't dipped low with sorrow. It was sharp, cold, terrifying, professional. Do this for me, Emily? Or the world knows what our parents really were? I didn't choose arrogance, Michael. I chose silence to protect you, to protect our children from a truth they didn't deserve to hear. I sold my body to Sarah. I sacrificed my mind. I signed clinic papers in Dallas because I had no choice. The money I drained from our joint account was the price of Sarah's silence. He claims I brushed a strand of hair behind my ear and spoke flatly about science, technicalities, medical terms, carriers. He missed the point again. Michael always misses the point. Respect he demanded, honesty he required. The irony is suffocating. He missed the reality of his wife being destroyed. He says I thought he didn't matter. The truth is nothing mattered anymore. Not the brick house, not the Saturday grills, not the rituals on the porch swing. Sarah held the knife and I was already bleeding. He wanted to shout, to rage, to demand answers, but instead he sat there on the edge of the bed later that night, staring at the woman he once called his whole world. No, he was plotting. Michael never makes a decision without calculation. He decided he was being betrayed. He decided his pride couldn't handle it. Pride. He called protecting the foundation of our marriage vanity. Protecting my family was vanity to him. He never asked about my why. He never asked about the fear. He just assumed the worst. It's easier that way. Judge the behavior, ignore the cause. It provided that rapid clarity Michael loved so much. The silence that followed wasn't cold, Michael. It was dead. He claims I walked into the guest room. I didn't walk. I floated. A hollow shell. The hum of the ceiling fan spinning in the dark. Michael heard promises breaking, vows shattering, partnerships dissolving. He heard it, but he never felt it. Because while I was fighting a war against my own sister, fighting to keep the ground under his feet from collapsing, my steady, reliable husband was planning his survival. Resolve. Quiet withdrawal from the equation. He began gathering papers like a spy in his own home. Bank statements, screenshots, documents. While I was struggling with the hormone treatments, my mind foggy, my body heavy and foreign, my stomach beginning to swell with another man's child. My husband was gathering evidence, building his case like a wall, brick by brick, 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 brick. I carried on as if I were invisible, he claims. Open calls with Mark and Sarah, embryo transfers, ultrasound dates. He says I rolled my eyes at his dramatics, that I rationalized my choice. I was exhausted, Michael. I was drowning. My own husband was pushing my head underwater while demanding a conversation, demanding blind obedience while shouting about respect. His pride couldn't handle it. He called it vanity. I called it safety. He said if I went through with this, he wouldn't stay. That was the moment. The final fracture. It was my survival or his pride. I chose survival. He claims it was my choice. He claims I cut him out. Sarah blackmailed me. Sarah held the knife. And my steady husband watched it happen and called it his betrayal. The night my water broke, Michael stood in the doorway. He watched me clutch my stomach. He watched the sweat drip down my face. He told you he felt a tug of guilt. He told you he remembered holding my hand during the twins' birth. He lied. His eyes were flat, cold like a frozen lake. He crossed his arms and told me to call an ambulance. He closed the door. The click of that lock was the loudest sound I ever heard. It echoed in my chest. It shattered the last piece of my heart. I dragged myself down the hallway. My fingernails scraped the paint off the walls. The pain tore through my body, a blinding, searing heat. The siren wailed outside. Red and blue lights flashed through the living room windows. I crawled out the front door alone. The hospital room smelled of bleach and latex. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A high-pitched hum that drilled into my skull. The nurses pushed and pulled. I screamed until my throat tasted like copper. And then silence. A sharp, piercing cry broke the air. The doctor held up a tiny, squirming body. A boy. My chest heaved. I closed my eyes, waiting for the relief, waiting for Sarah to take her prize, waiting for the nightmare to end. Sarah and Mark walked into the room hours later. Sarah wore a cashmere sweater, her hair perfectly styled. She looked like she was arriving at a brunch, not a delivery room. Mark trailed behind her, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. They stepped up to the plastic bassinet. I lay on the bed, my body broken, bleeding, exhausted. I watched their faces. I waited for the tears of joy. I waited for the overwhelming gratitude. Instead, Sarah stopped. Her posture stiffened. She leaned closer to the glass, her brow furrowed. Mark stepped next to her. The color drained from his face. The room grew unnaturally quiet. The only sound was the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor. Sarah turned to look at me. Her eyes were wide, frantic. She didn't look like a new mother. She looked like a woman who had just seen a ghost. "He doesn't look like us," Sarah whispered. Her voice trembled. I tried to sit up. The stitches pulled tight against my skin. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "He is a newborn. They all look the same." Mark shook his head. He backed away from the bassinet. His chest rose and fell in quick, shallow breaths. "Look at his hair. Look at his skin. Emily, look at him." The nurse brought the baby to my chest. I looked down. He had thick, pitch-black hair, olive skin, deep, piercing dark eyes. Mark is blonde. Sarah is blonde. Our family is pale. This child did not carry a single drop of our blood. A cold dread washed over me. The room started to spin. The buzzing in my ears grew louder. "Call the doctor," Mark demanded. His voice cracked. "Call him right now." The next 48 hours were a blur of needles, swabs, whispered conversations in the hallway, doctors avoiding eye contact, hospital administrators pacing with clipboards. Sarah paced the floor, biting her nails until they bled. Mark sat in the corner, staring at the wall. I held the baby. He felt warm against my chest. He breathed softly. He didn't know he was a bomb waiting to explode. Then came the man in the white coat. He carried a single sheet of paper. His face was grim. He closed the door behind him. The air in the room vanished. "There has been a catastrophic error," the doctor said. His voice was steady, but his hand shook. The paper trembled in his grip. "We rushed the DNA test." Sarah stepped forward. "Tell me," she demanded. The doctor swallowed hard. 0% match, he said. "The embryo implanted was not yours. There was a mix-up at the Dallas clinic. This child belongs to someone else." The paper fluttered to the floor. 0%. The words hung in the air like smoke. Not her baby, not Mark's baby, not my baby, a stranger. I was holding a complete stranger. Sarah let out a sound I had never heard before, a jagged, ugly sob. She grabbed Mark's arm. "We are leaving," she said. "Wait," I called out. My voice was raspy, weak. "Sarah, wait. What about the baby? What about me?" Sarah turned around. Her eyes were hard. The vulnerability was gone, replaced by a cruel, calculating ice. He is not mine, Emily. You heard the doctor. He is a stranger. You carried him. He is your problem now. You forced me to do this, I screamed. My throat burned. You blackmailed me. Prove it, Sarah spat. There is no proof. You signed the papers, Emily. You took the money. You are the surrogate. Congratulations on your new son. They walked out. The heavy door swung shut behind them. The click of the latch echoed in the sterile room, just like the click of Michael's bedroom door. Abandoned. Again. I sat alone in the hospital bed. The medical bills were already piling up. Tens of thousands of dollars. The Dallas clinic would cover their tracks. Sarah would deny everything. Michael had filed for divorce and taken my home. I had nothing. No money, no family, no husband. I looked down at the dark-haired boy in my arms. He opened his eyes and looked up at me. He gripped my finger with a tiny, fragile hand. He was completely alone in the world, just like me. I didn't know who his father was. I didn't know where he came from. But as I felt his tiny heartbeat against my chest, a new vow formed in my mind. A vow sharper than Michael's pride. A vow of fire. I would survive, and one day I would make them all pay. The descent was fast. You do not glide into poverty. You crash. I walked out of the hospital with a plastic bag of free formula and a newborn in my arms. The red brick house in Cedar Park was gone. Michael blocked my number. He blocked my emails. He erased me from his life with the push of a button. My children, Jacob, Lily, Noah. They were ghosts locked behind a fortress of lawyers and court orders. I was a stranger in my own life. I rented a single room in East Austin. It smelled of mildew and stale smoke. The wallpaper peeled off the walls like dead skin. The floorboards groaned under my weight. The window had a crack running down the middle. It let the winter wind blow straight into our bones. I placed the baby on a thin mattress on the floor. I named him Leo. He had no family name. He had no history. He only had me. The money Sarah paid me was gone, swallowed by hospital bills and lawyer fees. I needed to eat. I needed to buy diapers. I needed to keep the heat on, so I swallowed my pride. I bought a cheap uniform, a gray cotton dress, flat rubber shoes. I tied my hair back. I became a maid. I cleaned the houses of the rich, houses with manicured lawns and marble countertops, houses with heavy oak doors just like the one I used to own. I scrubbed toilets until my arms went numb. I polished silver forks I would never eat with. I wiped grease from stoves I would never cook on. The chemicals burned my hands, my skin cracked and bled. The bleach stung my eyes, my knees bruised black and blue from kneeling on hard tile. Scrub, rinse, repeat. It was a new rhythm, not the comforting hum of Michael's lawnmower. It was the rhythm of brutal survival. Sometimes the homeowners looked at me. Mostly they looked through me. I was invisible. A machine that removed dirt from their perfect lives. They left loose change on dressers. They threw away untouched food, a whole roasted chicken, half a loaf of artisan bread. I wrapped the scraps in paper towels and hid them in my apron. I fed Leo with the discarded wealth of strangers. Leo grew. He was not a normal child. He did not cry for plastic toys. He did not throw tantrums in the grocery store. He watched. His dark eyes tracked everything around him. The way light filtered through the cracked window, the way water dripped from the leaky faucet. He memorized patterns. By the time he was 3, he did not speak in baby talk. He spoke in full measured sentences. His voice was calm, too calm for a toddler. I brought home discarded items from my cleaning jobs, broken radios, torn books, puzzles missing half their pieces. Leo fixed them. He sat on the faded rug for hours. His tiny fingers worked with impossible precision. He rewired a broken alarm clock by age 4. He arranged puzzle pieces not by the picture but by the mathematical shape of the cardboard. His mind was a labyrinth. I watched him build a bridge out of dry pasta and cheap glue. It held the weight of my heavy work boots. He looked up at me, his face serious, his eyes deep and calculating. He was a genius. He possessed a terrifying, brilliant mind. It was a stark reminder every single day he was not my blood. He came from a lineage of immense power, a lineage I did not understand. But he was my son. Blood did not make us family. Survival did. When the nights were freezing, we huddled under a single wool blanket. I pressed his small body against my chest to share my body heat. He would reach up and touch my cracked cheek. He would wipe my tears with his small thumb. "Do not cry, Mama," he would say. "I will fix it. I will fix everything for us." That was the bond. Stronger than any marriage vow Michael ever spoke. Stronger than the twin connection Sarah shattered for her own selfish gain. Leo and I were an island in a sea of concrete. Michael lived his peaceful life in Cedar Park. He ate pizza on Fridays. He played football in the yard. He told himself he was a good man. He told himself I got what I deserved. Sarah and Mark faded into their own miserable silence. They hid their dark secret. They lived with their lies. They all thought I was dead. A ghost haunting the slums. A woman broken by her own mistakes. They did not know I was raising a king in the dirt. They did not know the dark-haired boy with the piercing eyes was growing stronger every day. 5 years passed. 5 years of bleach and blisters. 5 years of cold soup and worn-out shoes. I lost my youth. I lost my softness. My hands were rough like sandpaper. My heart was a fortress of solid steel. I did not love Michael anymore. I did not miss Sarah. I only cared about Leo. I woke up every morning at 4. I packed his lunch. I walked him to the cheap daycare down the street. I kissed his forehead. I went to scrub floors. It was a hard life. It was a brutal life, but it was ours. I thought we were safe in our misery. I thought the Dallas clinic had destroyed the evidence. I was wrong. The past does not stay buried. It waits, it hunts, and one rainy Tuesday, it finally found us. It was a Tuesday night. The rain hit the tin roof like scattered bullets. The kind of rain that floods the streets of East Austin and pushes the rats into the walls. The apartment was freezing. I had a single space heater glowing orange in the corner. Leo sat on the faded rug. He was taking apart a broken toaster with a butter knife. He was 5 years old. He did not watch cartoons. He mapped circuits. I stood at the sink, my hands submerged in soapy water. My back ached from scrubbing marble floors in Westlake all day. I closed my eyes listening to the rain, the rhythm of the storm. Then the rhythm broke. A low, heavy rumble vibrated through the floorboards. It was not thunder. It was the sound of engines, massive, powerful engines idling right outside my window. The orange glow of the street lamp was blocked. Bright white headlights sliced through the cracks in the blinds. I froze. The soapy water dripped from my fingertips. Doors slammed. Heavy car doors. Boots splashed against the flooded pavement. Footsteps echoed up the wooden stairs. Slow, deliberate, heavy. 3 knocks on the door. It was not a request. It was an order. It was the sound of someone who owned the door of the building and the street. My heart hammered against my ribs. My breath caught in my throat. I wiped my wet hands on my apron. I looked at Leo. He did not flinch. He just set the butter knife down and stared at the door, his dark eyes unblinking. "Stay there," I whispered. I walked to the door. My knees trembled. I undid the chain lock. I turned the deadbolt. I pulled the door open just a crack. The hallway smelled of rain and expensive leather. 4 men stood in the dark. They wore tailored black suits. They stood like statues, broad shoulders, earpieces, but they were not the threat. The threat was the man standing in the center. He stepped forward. The dim hallway light hit his face. Sharp jawline, cold, calculating gray eyes, a dark wool coat resting on his shoulders. He radiated a quiet, terrifying power. He did not look at the peeling wallpaper. He did not look at my stained apron. He looked straight into my eyes. His gaze felt like a physical weight pressing against my chest. "Emily Carter," he said. His voice was low, smooth like polished steel. "Who are you?" I asked. My voice shook. I tried to close the door, but a massive hand in a leather glove stopped it effortlessly. The man stepped closer. The air around him felt cold. "My name is Alexander Sterling," he said. "Kick." I stopped breathing. Alexander Sterling. Even in the slums, you knew that name. A tech billionaire. A phantom who controlled data empires. A man who bought and sold companies before breakfast. What was he doing standing in a decaying hallway in East Austin? "You have something that belongs to me," he said flatly. I pushed back against the door with all my strength. "I have nothing," I snapped. "Leave, or I will scream." He did not blink. "Scream," he replied. "No one will come. The police work for me. The landlord works for me. The clinic in Dallas worked for me until they made a mistake." The word Dallas hit me like a physical blow. The air rushed out of my lungs. The clinic, the mistake, the secret I buried under 5 years of bleach and exhaustion. He pushed the door open. He stepped into the cramped, mildewed room. The space felt instantly smaller. The bodyguard stayed in the hallway. Alexander stood in the center of the room. The space heater cast a faint orange glow on his shoes, shoes that cost more than my life. His gray eyes swept the room. They passed the leaky sink. They passed the thin mattress. They passed the cheap formula boxes. They stopped on the faded rug. They stopped on Leo. The silence in the room stretched. It became heavy, thick, suffocating. Alexander stared at the boy. Leo stared back. They had the same dark, piercing intensity, the same posture, the same unyielding, calculating stillness. It was like looking at a mirror reflecting across time. I stepped between them. I shielded Leo with my body, my hands curled into fists. He is my son, I snarled. The instinct was primal, violent. I would bite through bone to protect the boy. Alexander slowly shifted his gaze back to me. His expression did not change, but the temperature in the room dropped. 5 years ago, my wife died in a car crash, he said. His voice was completely devoid of emotion. Before she died, we created an embryo. It was stored at a private facility in Dallas, a secure facility, or so I was told. My throat closed tight. The buzzing in my ears started again, the same buzzing from the delivery room. The clinic was compromised, Alexander continued. A corrupted doctor, a chaotic logbook. My heir was misplaced. They tried to hide it. They paid off the staff. They buried the files. They hoped the billionaire widower would never ask questions. But I always ask questions. I spent 5 years tearing this state apart piece by piece. I destroyed careers. I bankrupted hospitals. I hunted down every single transfer made in that month. He pointed a long, steady finger at Leo. Your sister Sarah paid for a rush transfer. The doctor swapped the vials to cover his tracks. You carried my child Emily. You birthed my heir. I stood frozen. The pieces crashed together in my mind. The dark hair, the brilliant, terrifying mind, the 0% match. Leo was not an accident. He was the stolen prince of a billion-dollar empire. You abandoned your family. Alexander said, his voice cutting through my shock. You lived in the dirt. You scrubbed toilets. You starved, all to keep a child that does not share a single drop of your blood. Why? Bah. I stood tall. I looked the billionaire straight in his cold gray eyes. Because he was mine to protect, I said. When everyone else walked away, I stayed. Alexander Sterling tilted his head. A slow, dangerous realization dawned on his face. He looked at the mold on the walls. He looked at the broken toaster. He looked at the fierce, unbroken woman standing between him and his son. Pack your things, he ordered. The black SUVs are waiting. Pack your things? The words echoed in the cramped room. It was not a request. Alexander Sterling did not make requests. He gave commands. He expected the world to bow. He took a step toward the faded rug. He reached out a hand toward the boy. Come here, Leo, Alexander said. His voice was softer now, a calculated softness. Leo did not move. He sat perfectly still next to the broken toaster. His dark eyes darted from the tall stranger to my face. He dropped the butter knife. It clattered against the floor. He stood up, but he did not walk toward his biological father. He walked backward. He grabbed the hem of my gray apron. His small fist curled tight into the fabric. He pressed his face against my leg. I placed my hand on his head. I felt him trembling, not with fear, with defiance. Alexander stopped. His hand hovered in the air. The cold, calculating billionaire froze. He looked at the boy clinging to a maid in a damp, decaying apartment. He saw the truth. He could buy companies, he could destroy hospitals, he could hire private armies, but he could not buy the 5 years I spent keeping this child alive. He is my son, Alexander said. His jaw tightened. The blood in his veins is mine. The empire I built belongs to him. I am taking him home. I stood my ground. The cracked floorboards dug into my shoes. You can drag him out of here, I said. My voice was steady, cold. You can put him in a mansion, you can surround him with guards and tutors, but he will never look at you the way he looks at me. You are a stranger. Blood does not erase 5 years of survival. Blood did not hold him when he was sick. Blood did not starve so he could eat. I did. The silence returned, heavy and suffocating. The rain battered the window. Alexander lowered his hand. He looked at the peeling wallpaper. He looked at my blistered fingers. He looked at the fierce, unbroken bond between a discarded woman and a stolen heir. His gray eyes narrowed. The gears in his mind turned. a brilliant, ruthless machine recalibrating its strategy. He realized force would break the boy. He needed a bridge. He needed me. Alexander reached into his dark wool coat. He pulled out a leather wallet. He did not pull out money. He pulled out a heavy cream-colored card. He tossed it onto the leaky kitchen counter. You protected what was mine, Alexander said slowly. You sacrificed your life, your marriage, your dignity for a child that was not yours. You have a loyalty I cannot buy, and I need that loyalty. I stared at him. The orange light from the heater flickered across his sharp face. What do you want? I asked. Alexander stepped closer. The scent of rain and power surrounded me. I want my son to thrive, he said. He is a sterling. He has a mind that will shape the future, but he needs a mother. He needs the only mother he has ever known, you. My breath caught. My fingers tightened in Leo's hair. I am making you an offer, Emily, Alexander continued. His voice dropped an octave, smooth, dangerous, seductive in its absolute power. Walk out of this room, leave the apron, leave the dirt, step into my world. You will not be a maid. You will be my wife. You will be the legal mother of my heir. You will have access to resources you cannot even fathom. You will never scrub a floor again. You will never go hungry. The room spun. A fake marriage, a business transaction, a mother to a billionaire heir. It was madness. It was an impossible leap from the gutter to the throne. Why would you do that? I whispered. You could just take him. I could, Alexander agreed flatly, but it would break him. And I do not build broken things. I build empires. You are the foundation he needs, but there are conditions. I waited. The air grew thick. If you accept this, Alexander said, the woman standing in this room dies tonight. Emily Carter, the victim, the discarded surrogate, ceases to exist. You will become Emily Sterling. You will wear my name like armor. You will learn how to wield power. You will learn how to crush anyone who steps in your path. You will belong entirely to my world, and in return, no one will ever take this boy from you. He looked deep into my eyes. He was searching for weakness. He was searching for the broken woman Michael left behind. He did not find her. He found a survivor. He found a woman forged in the fire of betrayal. I looked down at Leo. He was looking up at me, his dark eyes wide and trusting. He was my whole world. He was the only pure thing left in my life. I looked back at Alexander. I thought about Michael living his peaceful life in his red brick house. I thought about Sarah and Mark hoarding their secrets. I thought about the judge striking the gavel and leaving me with nothing. I reached out and picked up the cream-colored card from the counter. My cracked, bleeding fingers brushed against the thick paper. I accept, I said. The words tasted like iron and honey. Alexander Sterling smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile, a smile that promised destruction to enemies. Good, he said. Let them freeze in the dark. We are leaving. I did not pack a bag. I did not take the broken toaster. I did not look back at the mildewed walls. I picked up Leo. I wrapped my arms around his small body. I walked out of the door. The bodyguard stepped aside. The black SUVs waited in the pouring rain. The doors opened. I stepped inside the warm, leather-scented cabin. The doors slammed shut. The engines roared. Emily Carter was dead. The queen was born. The water was hot. It burned my skin. It washed away the smell of bleach. It washed away the grease and the mildew. I stood under the rainfall showerhead until my muscles uncoiled. I watched the gray water swirl down the drain. 5 years of dirt. 5 years of shame. 5 years of hiding in the shadows. Gone. Washed away in a single afternoon. A team of women waited in the next room. They moved with silent precision. They filed my cracked nails. They massaged expensive oils into my bruised knees. They cut the split ends from my hair. They wrapped me in silk. The fabric slid against my skin like water. I looked in the floor-to-ceiling mirror. The woman looking back was a stranger. Her spine was straight. Her chin was high. The dark circles under her eyes were gone, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. The hunted animal was dead. The predator was born. I stepped into a pair of black leather heels. They clicked against the marble floor, a sharp, commanding sound, the sound of absolute power. Alexander waited in the study. The room smelled of mahogany and old paper. He sat behind a dark oak desk. He pushed a stack of thick legal documents toward me. A heavy gold fountain pen rested on top. These are the trust documents, Alexander said. His voice was smooth. Business. You are the sole legal guardian of Leo's assets. You control the Sterling estate in his name until he comes of age. You have absolute authority over billions. Sign it. I picked up the heavy gold pen. The metal was cool against my fingers. I did not hesitate. I pressed the nib to the thick paper. I signed my new name, Emily Sterling. The ink dried quickly. The maid was officially dead. I owned $1 billion empire. I owned my freedom. Leo thrived in the new world. The mansion was a fortress of glass and steel. He had laboratories instead of broken toasters. He had private tutors flown in from Europe. He walked the manicured lawns with his hands in his pockets. He looked like a prince. He looked like Alexander. But at night, the quiet rhythm of our survival remained. He still climbed into my silk sheets and pressed his head against my chest. The bond remained unbroken. We were finally safe. But safety is an illusion. The past is a parasite. It feeds on weakness. And miles away, the parasites were starving. Sarah sat at a chipped laminate kitchen table. Her cashmere sweaters were long gone, replaced by a faded cotton shirt. A stack of envelopes sat in front of her. Red ink stamped across the paper. Final notice. Past due. The medical bills from her own failed treatments had drained their accounts. The surrogate disaster had ruined their credit. Mark had lost his corporate job. The bank was threatening foreclosure. Their life was crumbling into dust. Mark walked into the cramped kitchen, his shoulders slumped. He tossed a glossy business magazine onto the table. It slid across the wood and hit a cold cup of coffee. The dark liquid spilled over the edge. "Look at this," Mark said. His voice was hollow, scratchy. Sarah rubbed her tired eyes. She pulled the magazine closer. The cover featured a sprawling tech campus. In the corner, a smaller candid photo. Alexander Sterling stepping out of a black car. He was holding the hand of a young boy in a tailored suit. The headline read, "Tech Phantom, Alexander Sterling reveals hidden heir." Sarah stared at the photo. Her breath stopped. The color drained from her face completely. She pulled the magazine inches from her eyes. The boy had thick, pitch black hair, olive skin, deep, piercing dark eyes, a face she could never forget. The exact face she saw in the hospital bassinet 5 years ago. The face she threw away like garbage. "That is him," Sarah whispered. Her hands began to shake. The glossy paper crinkled under her grip. "That is the mistake from the clinic." Mark leaned over her shoulder. His eyes widened in shock. He tapped the boy's face with a trembling finger. "Sterling," he muttered. "The embryo was a sterling. We threw away $1 billion, Sarah. We gave him to Emily." Sarah stood up. Her chair scraped violently against the linoleum floor. She paced the cramped kitchen. Her breathing was fast, shallow, panic mixed with a sudden vicious surge of greed. The same calculating ice I saw in the delivery room returned to her eyes. "He is legally ours," Sarah said. Her voice rose, frantic, sharp. "We paid for that embryo transfer. Emily was just a surrogate. She signed a contract to carry our child. That boy belongs to us." Mark stared at her, his face pale. "But the DNA test," he stammered. "He is not our blood. He is a sterling." "Who cares about blood?" Sarah snapped. She slammed her flat palm onto the table. The coffee cup rattled. "We have the original surrogate contract. It has Emily's signature. It has Michael's signature. It names us as the intended parents. The clinic covered the mistake. But the legal paperwork still exists. If we sue for custody, we control the heir. We control the trust fund. We get our lives back. We get everything." Mark swallowed hard. A slow, greedy smile crept across his face. "We take him back," he agreed. They did not think about the boy. They did not think about the 5 years I spent keeping him alive in the freezing dark. They only saw a winning lottery ticket. Sarah grabbed her phone. Her knuckles were white. She dialed her lawyer. The Viper was awake. She was ready to strike again, but she did not know the rules had changed. She was not hunting a broken maid anymore. She was hunting a queen, and queens do not run, they destroy. The Austin Grand Hotel ballroom smelled of expensive perfume and old money. Crystal chandeliers threw sharp light onto the polished marble floor. Waiters carried silver trays of champagne. The air hummed with the quiet arrogance of the Texas elite. It was a charity gala, a place where billionaires bought good public relations. Michael stood near the bar. He wore a rented tuxedo. It was a little too tight around his shoulders. He was trying to secure a massive heating and cooling contract for a new commercial development. He held a glass of cheap bourbon. He felt confident. He felt like a man who had survived a storm and rebuilt his house on solid rock. He smiled at the men around him. He played the part of the steady, reliable businessman. Across the room, Sarah and Mark hovered near the entrance. They did not belong there. They had begged a former client for 2 tickets. Sarah wore a dress from 5 seasons ago. It hung loose on her thin frame. Mark nervously adjusted his collar. They were hunting. They carried a leather folder. Inside was the original Surrogate contract, the trap they planned to spring on Alexander Sterling. They scanned the crowd with desperate, greedy eyes. Then the music stopped. The heavy oak doors at the top of the grand staircase swung open. The low murmur of the crowd died instantly. A heavy, suffocating silence rolled through the massive room. Even the waiters stopped moving. Alexander Sterling stepped onto the landing. He wore a tailored black tuxedo. He did not look at the crowd. He looked over him, a king inspecting his domain. He radiated a cold, terrifying authority. The men at the bar straightened their postures. The women held their breath. But Alexander did not walk down the stairs alone. He offered his arm. A woman stepped out of the shadows and into the blinding crystal light. She wore a deep sapphire gown. The silk moved like liquid around her legs. A diamond necklace rested against her collarbone. It caught the light and threw sharp flashes across the room. Her dark hair was swept back. Her posture was flawless. Her chin was high. She moved with the silent, deadly grace of a panther. It was me, Emily Sterling, the maid who scrubbed their floors, the surrogate they threw away, the wife he discarded. Michael took a sip of his bourbon. His eyes drifted to the staircase. He froze. The glass slipped from his fingers. It hit the marble floor. It shattered into 100 pieces. The amber liquid splashed against his rented shoes. He did not notice. He could not breathe. The air was sucked completely out of his lungs. His heart hammered violently against his ribs. He stared at the woman on the stairs. His mind violently rejected reality. The face belonged to his broken wife. The posture belonged to an empress. He remembered the woman crying in the hallway. He remembered the woman he told to call an ambulance. He remembered telling the judge she was a manipulative liar. Now she was standing next to a man who could buy and sell his entire existence with a single phone call. The steady rhythm of his life collapsed in 1 second. A cold sweat broke out on his neck. His hands began to shake. On the other side of the room, Sarah dropped her leather folder. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The blood rushed out of her face. She grabbed Mark by the arm. Her fingernails dug deep into his jacket. Mark stumbled backward. He looked like he had been punched in the stomach. The woman they planned to blackmail was not a victim anymore. She was the billionaire's wife. She held the power. She held the money. She held their destruction in her manicured hands. The trap they built had just closed on their own necks. Alexander led me down the grand staircase. The crowd parted like water. They bowed their heads. They whispered my new name, Emily Sterling. It sounded like music. It sounded like absolute victory. I walked past the bar. I did not turn my head. I let my eyes slide over Michael. I looked right through him. He was a ghost, a pathetic, insignificant speck of dust on my floor. I saw his chest heaving. I saw the pure terror in his eyes. I saw the exact moment his fragile male pride shattered into dust. He wanted to speak. He wanted to scream my name. But the presence of Alexander Sterling kept his mouth glued shut. I kept walking. We approached the center of the room. Sarah stood directly in my path. Her knees were shaking. She looked at the diamond necklace. She looked at the cold, dead emptiness in my eyes. She tried to pick up the leather folder. Her fingers were numb. She fumbled. She failed. Alexander stopped. He looked at Sarah. He looked at Mark. He knew exactly who they were, the people who threw his son away. He did not say a word. He just smiled. A slow, terrifying smile that promised complete annihilation. I stepped closer to Sarah. The scent of my perfume wrapped around her. I leaned in. My voice was a soft, deadly whisper. "Keep the folder, Sarah," I said. "You're going to need it for the bankruptcy courts." I did not wait for her answer. I did not look back. I took Alexander's arm. We walked to the front table. The flashbulbs of the society photographers went off like lightning. I sat down. I smoothed the silk of my dress. I looked across the room. Michael was still staring at the shattered glass on the floor. Sarah was violently shaking. The storm they started 5 years ago had finally returned. But this time, I was the one controlling the lightning. The flashbulbs kept firing. Bright white light exploded across the ballroom. Sarah saw the cameras. She saw the reporters from the society papers. Her panic morphed into a desperate feral instinct. She grabbed Mark by the arm. She pushed him forward. She lunged into the center of the room. She threw herself onto her knees right in front of my table. Tears streamed down her face. Perfect theatrical tears. She clawed at the air. She screamed my name. Emily, please. She sobbed loud enough for the microphones to catch. Please give me my son back. You stole my baby. You signed the papers to be my surrogate, and you ran away with my child. The room went dead silent. The violin stopped playing. The waiters froze in place. Every camera swung toward Sarah. She looked like a broken, desperate mother. She played the victim flawlessly. She pointed a shaking finger at me. She used my sisterhood against me. She used my body against me. She thought public pressure would break me. She thought Alexander would recoil from a sudden scandal. She thought I was still the weak woman she blackmailed. I did not recoil. I did not blink. I picked up my crystal water glass. I took a slow sip. The water was ice cold. I set the glass down. The clink echoed in the silent room. I stood up. The silk of my dress pulled around my heels. I looked down at Sarah. She was a rat caught in a trap of her own making. Alexander leaned back in his chair. He crossed his arms. He watched me. He did not intervene. A king does not fight a peasant. He lets the queen handle the execution. You want your son back? I asked. My voice was calm. It carried across the polished marble floor. It cut through her fake sobs like a razor. Yes, Sarah cried. She buried her face in her hands. He is my flesh and blood. You took him from me when I was weak. I just want my family whole again. I nodded slowly. I snapped my fingers. Just once, a sharp cracking sound. Alexander's assistant stepped out from the shadows. He wore a sharp gray suit. He walked directly to the audio technician booth at the back of the room. He handed the technician a black flash drive. He pointed a steady finger to the main soundboard. 10 seconds passed. The silence was suffocating. Sarah stopped fake crying. She looked up. Confusion replaced the fake sorrow on her face. Her breathing hitched. A static hiss crackled through the massive speakers suspended from the ceiling. Then a voice echoed through the grand ballroom. It was loud. It was crystal clear. It was a digital recording from a sterile hospital room 5 years ago. He does not look like us. The voice belonged to Sarah. It sounded panicked, disgusted. 0% match, the doctor's voice replied. Not her baby. Sarah's face turned ash gray. She scrambled backward on the floor. Her heels slipped on the polished marble. Turn it off, she screamed. Turn it off right now. The recording did not stop. It played her ultimate betrayal for the elite of Texas to hear. He is not mine, Emily. You heard the doctor. He is a stranger. You carried him. He is your problem now. The elite crowd gasped. Whispers erupted like a wildfire. Michael stood frozen near the bar. His jaw hung open. The bourbon stained his shoes. The perfect sister bond he always admired was a rotting corpse. The truth hit him like a physical blow. He had divorced a victim. He had abandoned an innocent woman. I stepped closer to Sarah. But the execution was not over. I looked at the reporters. I pointed to the gray-suited assistant. He was now handing thick manila envelopes to the press row. You did not just abandon a child, Sarah, I said. My voice was relentless, a heavy hammer striking an anvil. You discovered the clinic's mistake. You realized the embryo belonged to Alexander Sterling. You realized the doctors were terrified. So you struck a deal behind my back. You took a payout, $200,000 of hush money wired to an offshore account. You sold a billionaire heir to cover your own failed treatments. You sold my life to clear your debt. You left me with a baby and an empty bank account. The flashbulbs exploded again, blinding white light. Reporters tore open the envelopes. They pulled out bank statements, routing numbers, the signature of the clinic director, the signature of Sarah Carter. It is a lie, Sarah shrieked. Her voice cracked. She looked at Mark. Tell them it is a lie. Mark, help me. Mark did not look at her. He took 2 steps backward. He put his hands in the air. He was abandoning a sinking ship. The greed was gone, replaced by pure terror. He left her on the floor, just like she left me in the hospital bed. The heavy oak doors of the ballroom swung open again. 4 police officers stepped inside. Their boots thudded loudly against the marble. They walked straight towards Sarah. The silver handcuffs clinked on their black leather belts. Extortion, wire fraud, child abandonment. The federal charges were heavy enough to bury her behind concrete walls for decades. An officer grabbed her arm. He yanked her off the marble floor. She fought. She kicked. She screamed my name. Emily, you cannot do this. We are sisters. We are blood. We are family. Bob, I looked at her. Her expensive makeup was running down her face in dark black streaks. Her cheap dress was violently wrinkled. She looked exactly like I did 5 years ago, begging for mercy from a monster. We are not family, Sarah, I said. My voice was a flat, dead line. You held a knife to my throat. I just took it from you, and now I'm letting you bleed. The officers dragged her out of the ballroom. Her heels scraped against the stone. Her screams echoed down the grand staircase until they faded into the dark Texas night. The heavy doors slammed shut. The trap was sprung. The viper was crushed. I turned back to my table. The crowd parted instantly. They stepped back. Their eyes were full of absolute terror and complete respect. I sat down next to Alexander. He picked up his crystal champagne glass. He tilted it toward me. Flawless, he said. I picked up my water glass. I did not look back at the door. I did not look back at Michael. I simply drank my water. The taste of victory was cold, and it was absolutely perfect. Michael waited outside the gates of the Sterling estate. The wrought iron was 10 feet high, black and unforgiving. The rain soaked through his cheap coat. He shivered. His shoulders slumped. He looked like a stray dog standing in the mud. He waited for 3 hours. He watched the security cameras blink red in the dark. He knew I was watching him from inside the glass fortress. I let him stand there. I let the cold sink into his bones, just like he let the cold sink into mine 5 years ago. The heavy gate swung open silently. A black golf cart drove down the paved driveway. A security guard in a dark suit told Michael to walk inside. He did not offer him a ride. Michael walked up the long, winding path. His wet shoes squeaked on the pristine asphalt. He reached the front steps of the mansion. The double mahogany doors opened. I stood in the foyer. The ceiling was 30 feet high. A massive crystal chandelier hung above me. I wore a simple white silk dress. My hair was pulled back. I did not wear shoes. I stood on the heated marble floor, untouchable, unbothered. Michael stepped inside. He dripped water onto the marble. He looked around the massive space. His eyes were wide. He looked at me. His face was pale. His eyes were red and swollen. He looked older. The steady, reliable husband from Cedar Park was gone, replaced by a hollow, broken man. Emily, he whispered. His voice cracked. I did not speak. I simply watched him bleed. He took a step forward. He reached out a hand. I saw it all at the Gala, he stammered. I heard the tape. I saw the bank statements. Sarah set you up. She blackmailed you. She took the money. I kept my arms at my sides. I nodded once, a slow, deliberate movement. Yes, I said. My voice was completely flat. Michael's chest heaved. A sob ripped out of his throat. He fell to his knees. His wet pants slapped against the marble floor. The sound echoed in the massive foyer. He bowed his head. Tears mixed with the rain on his face. They dripped onto the stone. I am so sorry, he cried. I was blind. I was so stupid. I let my pride blind me. I thought you betrayed me. I thought you cast me aside for her. I should have asked questions. I should have listened to you. I should have been a husband. I left you alone. I threw you out when you were carrying a stranger's child. I am a monster, Emily. Please, please forgive me. He crawled forward. He reached for the hem of my silk dress. I took one step back. His fingers grasped empty air. He looked up at me. His eyes begged for a lifeline. He wanted absolution. He wanted the steady, forgiving wife to stroke his hair and tell him it was okay. He wanted the old rhythm back. I looked down at him. I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no pity, no love, just a vast empty void. You want forgiveness, Michael? I asked. I tilted my head. I looked at the puddle of dirty water forming around his knees. You made a choice 5 years ago, I said. My voice dropped to a cold whisper. You did not shout. You did not break walls. You chose a quiet withdrawal from the equation. You chose to build a case against me brick by brick. You chose to lock your bedroom door while I screamed in the hallway. Michael squeezed his eyes shut. He violently shook his head. I was wrong, he sobbed. Yes, I agreed. You were wrong, but you were also clear. Your silence was your answer then, Michael. My coldness is my answer now.
He looked up. Panic seized his face. Emily, please. We have children together. Jacob, Lily, Noah. They miss you. They ask about you.
My heart gave a microscopic flinch, the only crack in my armor, but I sealed it instantly. Alexander's lawyers had already begun the custody battle. I would see my children again, but I would not see them with him. I would take them into my world. I will see my children very soon, I said. My lawyers are filing the papers tomorrow. You are unfit to provide the life they deserve. Michael stopped crying. The reality of his complete destruction finally settled over him. You are taking them from me, he whispered.
You took them from me first, I replied. I am just restoring the balance.
I turned around. I walked toward the grand staircase. I did not look back. The security guards stepped out of the shadows. They grabbed Michael by his wet coat. They dragged him backward across the marble floor. He did not fight them. He just stared at my back. His spirit was completely crushed. The heavy mahogany doors opened. The guards threw him out into the freezing rain. The doors slammed shut. The lock clicked. A sharp final sound, the exact same sound his bedroom door made 5 years ago. The past was dead. The ties were severed. I walked up the stairs. The heated marble warmed my bare feet. I had an empire to run. The morning sun hit the glass walls of the Sterling estate. It cast long, bright, geometric shadows across the polished marble floor. I stood on the balcony. The air was crisp. The suffocating Texas heat was gone, replaced by a cool, commanding breeze. 5 years ago, I was on my knees scrubbing floors. My hands were bleeding. My stomach was empty. Today, I owned the skyline. I breathed in. The air tasted like absolute victory. The heavy mahogany doors of the master suite opened. Small footsteps padded across the thick Persian carpet. Not just one pair, 4. Jacob ran to me first. He was taller, his shoulders broader. He threw his arms around my waist. His grip was tight, desperate. The scent of his hair was exactly the same, boyish sweat and cedarwood. Lily and Noah followed right behind him. They grabbed my hands, their small fingers tangled in mine. They were crying soft, quiet tears. I dropped to my knees. The silk of my dress pooled around me. I pulled all 3 of them into my chest. I buried my face in their shoulders. The empty void in my chest finally closed shut. The missing pieces of my soul snapped back into place. Michael tried to fight the custody battle. He thought he could use his reliable father routine in the courtroom. He wore a cheap gray suit. He talked about Saturday farmers markets. He talked about his simple, honest life. The judge did not care about peaches and brisket. The judge cared about the massive stacks of paper Alexander's lawyers placed on the wooden desk. Trust funds for Jacob, Lily, and Noah. Millions of dollars guaranteed, elite academies, armed security details, a life of impenetrable safety. Then my lawyers played the hospital recording. They read the police reports. They showed the judge how Michael locked his bedroom door while I screamed in pain in the hallway. They proved he refused to call an ambulance for his pregnant wife. The judge looked at Michael with absolute pure disgust. The wooden gavel hit the desk like a gunshot. Primary custody awarded to the mother. Michael was completely erased. He lost the red brick house. The bank foreclosed on it. One phone call from Alexander ruined his entire professional network. Nobody hires a man who crossed a tech billionaire. Michael lives in a tiny apartment now. He sits alone on Saturday afternoons. He watches other families drive to the farmer's market from his stained window. The realization of what he threw away eats at his mind every single day. He thought he was teaching me a lesson. He only taught me how to live without him. Sarah is sitting in a federal prison. She thought her tears would save her. The prosecutor did not care. Wire fraud, extortion, child abandonment. The charges piled up like heavy bricks. She traded her cashmere sweaters for a stiff orange jumpsuit. Her concrete cell is 8 feet by 10 feet. She scrubs the prison floors every morning. The bleach burns her nose. The rough brush tears the skin on her knuckles. She looks at her ruined, bleeding hands every night. She remembers the maid she created. The universe has a brutal, terrifying sense of balance. Mark did not even wait for her trial. He packed his bags and vanished completely. I stood up. I held Lily's hand. I looked across the massive bedroom. Leo sat on the edge of the mahogany bed. He watched the reunion with his dark, piercing eyes. He did not look jealous. He looked curious. He was the heir to a $1 billion throne. but he was still the boy who shared a thin wool blanket with me in the freezing dark. Jacob walked over to him. Jacob reached out his hand. "Hi," Jacob said. "I am your brother." Leo looked at the hand. He looked at me. I gave him a slow, steady nod. Leo reached out and took Jacob's hand. He did not smile, but the rigid tension in his small shoulders vanished. The family was whole, not bound by genetics, bound by survival, bound by loyalty. Alexander walked into the room. He wore a crisp white shirt, the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He did not look like the terrifying phantom anymore. He looked like a man who had finally found the missing foundation of his empire. He stood next to me on the balcony. We watched the children playing on the carpet. We did not speak words of fake romance. We did not need fairy tales. We were forged in the exact same fire. We understood power. We understood ruthless protection. "You built a kingdom, Emily," Alexander said. His voice was a low, smooth rumble of pure respect. I looked out over the sprawling green lawns, the pristine security walls. The world outside could not touch us anymore. No more blackmail, no more secrets, no more begging for respect from a man who wanted my blind obedience. I was the architect of my own fate. "We built it together," I replied. "The rhythm of my life is no longer a quiet hum in the background. It is a roar, the roar of a woman who was pushed to the absolute edge of destruction and decided to conquer the abyss. The maid is dead. The surrogate is dead. The victim is entirely erased. I wear the silk. I hold the pen. I command the room. I am Emily Sterling.